Hey everybody, KC here. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend. You know, now that the government shutdown is over, at least for now, it means that the airlines and the airports were pretty much up and running and back to some semblance of normal. And the thing is, a lot of you may have had to, brave airports and airlines over the past weekend. Luckily, we did not have to do that. People came to us. But we all know that air travel can be a hairball, right? We all know that. But it would be nice if the airlines were incented to actually make it less so. Interesting piece from Condé Nast Traveler. The Department of Transportation has been rolling back consumer-friendly proposals recently and nixed a proposed rule that, if enacted, would have offered cash compensation to travelers for delayed flights and enshrined certain policies like offering hotels and meals to passengers when delays stretch past a certain number of hours. Because I guess, at least according to the Department of Transportation, the problem is not the system. The problem is not the airlines. The problem is really the passengers. Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, is out with a video in which he suggests that we really need to get back to the ethos of the 1950s, when air travelers wore suits and ties and dresses and hats. And as a result, he seems to be arguing, when people dress that way, they just tended to be more respectful. They tended to be more polite to each other. He says, bringing civility back, I think, enhances the travel experience for everybody. Let's maybe go back to an era where we didn't wear our pajamas to the airport. Really? First of all, I'm okay with actually bringing civility back. And I'm sure there's a cadre of people out there who would love to get back to the halcyon days of the 1950s. Because after all, that was a time when middle-aged and old white men were in charge and everybody else pretty much knew their place. But let's get beyond that for a second. To be fair, I think we've all seen some people wear outfits on airports, in airports and on airlines that make us shake our heads a little bit, right? And we've certainly seen behavior that goes right up to the line of what's acceptable and sometimes crosses that line. We've all seen it. But I think the real problem in this case is they're sort of blaming the victims. The victims in this, in terms of air travel, they're the passengers. Passengers who have to pay a lot of money, endure sometimes soul-crushing experiences both on the ground and in the air. They pay extra fees for pretty much everything, sit in crowded seats with ever-decreasing legroom, and have very little control over their experiences once they're in the system. Now listen, I know I like to dress a certain way when I'm traveling, but I think it would be presumptuous of me to expect everybody to dress the way I want to dress. This is 2025, not 1955, and I think it's a real mistake to create any kinds of expectations that we're ever going back to 1955. But the biggest mistake, I repeat, is it blames the customer. I just think that's bad form. I think a really good argument can be made that if you're going to treat your customers like cattle, you have to expect an occasional stampede. The vast majority of flights that I take, by the way, I think people are generally pretty respectful to each other. They're pretty polite. They help each other. They have reasonable expectations of their flight attendants, and they generally act as if this is not their first rodeo. You know when they get stressed out? When the system stresses them out, and when they're given little information and almost no recourse. It is a great lesson for everybody who's in the customer business, right? If you treat customers a certain way, you really don't have any right to expect them to treat you any better. This is not an excuse for bad behavior, but it's at the very least an explanation. Anyway, that's what's on my mind. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.